Hey ho guys, welcome to the Utah Jasmine GBA Season 2 recap video. In this video we're going to be going over all the games we played here in our first season of the league, all 14. Going to talk a little bit about each of them and go over any key plays, that sort of thing. After that we're going to have some team stats. Of course, we normally keep track of kills and deaths in the GBA, but I went a little bit beyond that and went into some more defensive stats that I personally just came up with. We don't have any official defensive stats that we keep in the GBA, but hopefully that'll change for the future. And then based on that, we're going to hand out a couple team awards, and then talk a little bit about some of the exciting off-season plans we have. So there will be timestamps in the description. You can use as a table of contents if you want to skip around, and enjoy. Alright, so we entered the league in the Johto Conference, and then proceeded to play the first 3 games out of conference against the Kanto Conference, which ended up to be the superior conference when all was said and done. Not only that, week 1 we played the Oklahoma City Thundurus, which was just narrowly missed the playoffs in Season 1. And it was a tight game. It was a 2-0 victory for the Thundurus, and I definitely had a chance to win it at the end. So I guess good plays we made. We had Assault Vest Hitmontop and hit his mascot Thundurus Incarnate with a close combat on the way in. And then with a defense drop, probably baiting, thinking he could kill with Thunderbolt, but of course we're Assault Vest, so we lived it, and yeah, something else happened later. Bad plays included, didn't go for a Heat Wave with Zapdos, just go ahead and knock it on out, get rid of Sand for the rest of the game. That would have been nice. But I think the bigger one was I did not Calm Mind up when he had Excadrill in towards the end of the game with Crocoon. Instead I just went straight for an attack, and that just allowed him to switch in Hippo, get Sand back up, and basically have the full turns of Sand. Of course, Suicune would have outsped Hippowdon and knocked that out, and then with the Calm Mind, his Thundurus was able to survive a Scald. With the Calm Mind, probably could have taken out in one hit, and of course with the extra special defense, lived a thing better. So that was my main complaint of how I played in that game. Lucky Breaks, he had a misclick. I think it was just a straight finger slip misclick on Dragon Claw with his Scarf Chomp against a Whimsicott, which was definitely not good. Gave me a time to set up a sub and other good stuff. And then unfortunate things, after that good play baiting the Thunderbolt, we had Hitmontop miss a Stone Edge. So that, I don't know if it would have killed, because it possibly would have killed. I know he said his Thundurus was pretty bulky, but may or may not have killed. Anyway, 2-0 loss for us in week 1. Week 2, we played a TPX buddy, Gubstacular, known by me more commonly as Like to Tubes, as he was back then. And his Arizona D-Oxys, probably the best team that's never won a championship. Made it to the championship last year and lost. And then I believe had the best record overall in the regular season for this year. And unfortunately lost in the conference championship game this year. It was a 5-0 loss. Considering where he ended up, I guess that's not, as bad as it could be. I felt, even though it was 5-0, it didn't feel like it was a complete total blowout. It lasted, I believe we had like 2 minutes left in the game clock when the last KO was made. I kind of joked earlier in the week that, we're, at this point anyway, kind of consider the 2 most defensive teams in the league. We might actually time out, and it didn't happen this week, as Mega Pinsir was able to come in for a late sweep, but it might happen later. So, good plays. Of course, in the 5-0 loss, you're probably not going to have too many good plays. Most of these, I don't even know if you could consider them good plays. It's more ballsy predictions with Hitmontop. We had threw a Stone Edge out there, and I was switching Snorlax, which was the correct play, and then later predicted a Togekiss to, either stay in and do nothing, or just switch, which of course, both stabs are super effective, so both those ended up to kind of pay off, anyway. Bad plays. On the first big U-turn we had, I brought Thistlecoat Whimsicott. I think this was the only week I brought Thistlecoat Whimsicott. Smacked Celebi really hard, and then got out to Zapdos. Now, the Celebi had a nasty plot up, so, this hit was going to hurt, and I kind of feel like I should have went to something to just kind of sack it off. I think the big problem here was I knew he was going to take a lot of damage, so I thought he was going to Giga Drain, when, from his perspective, he doesn't know I'm going to U-turn, so, he doesn't necessarily know that he needs to get that HP back, as he's at full right there. And then later on, I believe also off a U-turn, I decided to drop in Chansey against Mega Pinsir, which had switched in, and sacrificed about 80% of Chansey's life for the sake of putting a T-Wave on there, which, it's got quick attacks, so not the best idea in the world, perhaps. Speaking of paralysis, that's going to be one of the lucky breaks we got. I kind of called this, I believe, as I was playing, and said, I'm going to get this discharge paralysis on this Heatran, and sure enough, I got it, so I guess we got it, and that was good. And then the most unfortunate thing, I guess, that happened, is kind of similar to the previous week. We got a Stone Edge on a switch-in, and it missed. It was only on regular pincer, not mega pincer, so it wouldn't have KO'd, but it might have put it down to where he absolutely would have had to have had Stealth Rock off the field, well, yeah, in order to even switch in the pincer again. So that was week 2. Week 3, we closed out the out-of-conference slate with the game against longtime buddy Superblaw, aka Nick, owner of the Boston Red Sox, and another team that did really well this year. They're currently in the championship match as champions of the Kanto Conference. So this was an 0-2 loss. Could have been a little bit uglier, but we had some stuff go down midway through that got the differential a little bit closer. Good plays. At one point, of course, he brought Diggersby, which is a big threat to Scarf or Band. Didn't see a Life Orb on there, so I switched into Steelix to check if he was choiced into return. Ended up not to be, so at least we gained some information that way. That's about the best I can make out of this. Bad plays. At one point we had his Reuniclus, which had a couple calm mines up, asleep, thanks to Chansey. And with Gallight, I decided to go Knockoff right away rather than Swords Dance up. And knowing that if he woke up and recovered, of course, Knockoff's going to be reduced in power, and we're not going to be able to likely 2-hit KO it. And that is indeed exactly what happened, so should have went for Swords Dance instead. Although knocking off the Life Orb might have been the only way I would have survived that hit. Then later in the game, I kind of just sacrificed Chansey for basically nothing, trying to outspeed a Hariyama and I guess throw a Seismic Toss or something on it. When that Chansey actually was a 100% wall to his Aegislash, which had King Shield, Sub, Shadow Sneak, and Ball. So, oh well. I didn't know that at the time, but it did. Lucky breaks. This was where the differential shaving was able to happen. I just went ahead and went for Thief with Hitmontop against Aegislash, fully expecting King Shield to come in and drop my attack by 2. And I said, you know, I'm going to need a crit anyway. Let's just put the pressure on and get the crit through the attack drop. And that's exactly what happened. He was too weak to make a sub after that, and as a result, we were able to take 1 or 2 more knockouts, and we're able to get the game a little bit closer. And then some unfortunate stuff that happened. Nothing too major, I guess. We missed the Sing. It's about a coin flip move anyway, so I can't really be too upset about that. And then I believe he only stayed asleep 2 turns, so we got to switch in. No, we got to... I was faster, and then I was able to get Gallied in, and then he immediately woke up. So a little bit longer of a wake might have been nice, but you know, what can you do? It was kind of a gimmicky move to throw on there anyway. So anyway, that's going to close out the out-of-conference slate, and then we went into conference play. So we start conference play in week 4, coming in at 0-3, but with no conference losses, against the also 0-3 Chicago Granbulls and head coach Deafstroke. And at that point, he had the dual weather, the sun and the rain. I prepared a little bit more for the rain than the sun because I figured Chansey would help shut down most of the sun aspects, and he did bring the sun, so Chansey was able to have a really good day. So we got a 3-0 victory out of it, the first win of the season. And good plays included right out of the gates, threw a sub up with Mega Alakazam because I wanted to get that Mega Evolution off and get the traceability going on for Swift Swimmer Chlorophyll. And it happened that he brought Sucker Punch on his leadoff Mega Houndoom to deal with Mega Alakazam and, of course, substitute Trump's Sucker Punch. And then I was then able to parlay that early advantage with the substitute over Sucker Punch into getting Ninetales out of the way early. He sent that in to break the sub, and I proceeded to get outsped and 2-hit KO'd. So remove the Sun from the Sun team, and yeah, follows, you're going to have a pretty okay time, probably. Not really that many bad plays. 2 kind of sacrificial plays, I guess, is the closest thing. I opted to let Zapdos go down, take a big Fire Blast from Mega Houndoom rather than send in Chansey because I wanted to keep Chansey's HP up relatively high so it could deal with Latios. And then later I also switched Whimsicott in on a Sludge Bomb from Venusaur. That was pretty much just a sacrifice play. I just wanted some Death Fodder at that point. Lucky breaks, as far as non-RNG stuff, well, Donphan did not bring Knockoff, which made everything much, much easier. And then as far as actual RNG stuff, we got plenty of Parahacks this game, at least 5, including, I think, 3 in a row on Latios to make sure that it was not going to be dealing with Chansey, even with Psyshock. And then later in the game, there was no poisons off Sludge Bombs, which have been somewhat of a problem later in the season, but ended up to not happen this game. Week 5, we played the San Jose Sharpedos, another team that made the playoffs this year, and this match kind of boiled down to the standoff between Chansey and Tom's Latias. The only out of the ordinary good play we made was we pulled off a successful trap of Scizor, He didn't go for U-turn, opted for Bullet Punch against Whimsicott as Magneton came in. Probably just a little lapse in judgment, as of course, of team preview, you see Magneton coming. But we were able to get that trapped and get that KO'd. And the only, I guess, bad play I can identify, I'm not even sure if it would be a bad play. It's only bad in retrospect once you know how the RNG rolls were going to go. I did have one chance with Seismic Toss to 2-hit KO Latias on the one turn. I think I got paralyzed and opted not to take it because I wanted Chansey out of that exchange at 75% plus hit points. This was also before I knew he had Roost, so that changes the dynamic considerably. Outside of a Skull Burn from Suicune onto Mandibuzz, not too much in the way of luck going our way. And also with that Mandibuzz, it survived the Moonblast at I don't know, single-digit HP. That's bad enough. But then it followed up with a crit Brave Bird to bring Whimsicott down to really low hit points. So just throwing salt on the wound right there. Then of course the main unfortunate stuff was Latias, Victoria the Latias, getting paralyzed, I believe, one turn out of 12, I think it was. And, gamblers fallacy, I know, but you can't help but feel like we kind of used up all of our Parahack luck in the previous week. And that was the major contribution, I think, to the loss this week, 0-3. Week 6. Now, this was an interesting week for us. Some might say this is the week that turned the season around. We played the New Orleans Pelippers, coached by John, a.k.a. Pokemon, and, yeah, this was a weird lead-up into the game. We had the match scheduled for, I think it was like Thursday or something. I ended up showing up like really, really late Thursday, so we missed that, and then it ended up that he was actually going on a trip that weekend, so we ended up having to play it late, like Sunday night, I believe. He was tired, he was sunburned, so he was not in the best of sorts, but at least we were able to get it played. And compounding issues, we had 2 DCs, not once, but twice, and so we ended up deciding to play on Showdown, which was weird for me because I had never used Showdown before in my life. This was the first game I had ever played on it. But we were able to get it mostly recreated on there, the situation where we left off at the DC, and were able to finish the game. So I was really glad that we were able to do that. As for how the game actually went down, started off with decent advantage as I switched in Gallade on a predicted knockoff, and I got a Justify boost, and then predicted a switch to Sylveon, and Poison Jabbed, and got that thing crippled low enough that he just sacked it off on the next turn. So a bit of an advantage early. Some minor, by comparison, stuff that happened, some misses we had. We missed a couple Iron Tails. I only put Iron Tail on Steelix, mostly because it was kind of, well, I guess mostly for Sylveon, and because it was going to be the last game, as we had already agreed to trade Steelix around in a 3-person trade. Missed a couple Iron Tails. And I also missed the Toxic, all on D-Oxys D with Suicune that potentially could have been big later, but I will definitely trade that for the evades that we were able to pick up, most notably coming with, despite being -2, Overheat from Rotom Heat still would have been enough to, from Scarf Rotom Heat, mind, would have been enough to knock Cloyster down into KO range from all of his priorities, so we wouldn't have been able to get the 2-0 victory that we did with Scarf Cloyster, which made its debut in this game and would later be used to great effect. And then I believe Whimsicott also dodged the Stone Edge. That probably didn't matter as much. I think it had a decent chance to live. I think it was a chance at a 1-hit KO, but or at least from where it was at. But it also did have a chance to live. But I ended up to evade anyway. Hit him on top and missed a couple Stone Edges up to that point. So I was kind of glad to be on the other end of a Stone Broadside. But yeah, after the game, couldn't say enough about John and his sportsmanship and taking the loss. I believe I was one of the few teams that he lost against and didn't have the chance to redeem himself in a rematch. So, really proud that he won the Johto Conference and now is in the League Championships with a chance to take it home in the first season. Week 7 was our first of 2 games against the Cleveland Escavaliers, and this one was just ugly. Nexus and I started out disconnecting at Team Preview, got most of the game done, and then when I felt like I kind of had the advantage, we disconnected again. So, very distraught at that, and angry at my Wi-Fi, so we just decided to finish the game on Showdown like the previous week. But because we were so far deep, we just had to do a fresh start. So that's what all the stats and these talking points are going to be in reference to. I had noticed from his previous GBA viz that he liked to run Weakness Policy Rock Polish Rhyperior, so I was very aware of that, and I had HP Ice on Zapdos and never clicked it because I didn't want to give him +2/+2 on Rhyperior to jet around my Zapdos with. Early in the restart, we got a nice Toxic off on Rotom Cut that was very useful later on, and then shortly after that, a couple of series of switches, probably like 3 or 4 turns of just double switches that eventually led to getting Chansey in on Slowbro, and that gave me a chance to set up Stealth Rock, which is of course going to be a big thing for pretty much any game. And then towards the end of the game, I identified I wanted to have my win condition be Belly Drum up with Slurpuff and Sweep, and my best chance to do that is against Mienshao, which was paralyzed, and sacked off Chansey. He kind of made it difficult for me to sack it off, though, as he kept not using High Jump Kick, but eventually he did kill Chansey with Mienshao, kind of forced the issue. And we were indeed able to get up the Belly Drum Sweep with Slurpuff, which was the first game it was allowed to be brought. But the 3-0 victory was not without some terrible plays. I clicked Discharge against a Rotom Cut that I apparently thought I was going to be slower than and can discharge the thing that was coming in. Just click Roost and resist Volt Switch, Cooper. Ugh. And then in conjunction with that, I later, right after that, sent in regular Alakazam in on a Crobat, forgetting momentarily that you don't get the speed bonus the turn you Mega Evolve. So I ended up having to go back to Zapdos and sacking that off. If not for those 2 plays, probably could have just kept Zapdos around and got a 4-0. But anyway, a couple lucky breaks as well. Right after Suicune stalled out his Slowbro, he just dropped in Rhyperior for I don't know why. Maybe he thought he could live. But clicked Scald and got that out of the way. And that was his go-to thing for Zapdos in the early parts of the game. Which Zapdos also dodged a Will-O-Wisp from Rotom Cut. It's avoiding residual damage, so that's always something to be appreciated. Week 8, we played the laughingstock of Season 1, the Milwaukee Sawsbucks, but in Season 2, League Commissioner Magnitude really got it turned around. Definitely a big improvement from 1-9 to 6-6, finishing the year, correcting some of those draft mistakes, I guess. This one got started off, I identified, he has no form of hazard removal, so the game plan here was set up a lot of hazards, and that's pretty much what we did. Set up spikes on the first turn. Cloyster versus Victini, found out that he was Scarfed because he's still outsped, didn't necessarily reveal that I was Scarfed. So that was some big information gained right away. A little bit later, we had Gallade, Protoman, who was Pokemon of the game for sure, up in against Klefki, and was able to come out of that one on top. Only got 1 Parahacks, and was Drain Punching his way to victory. But with just a sliver of HP left, I instead opted to go into Chansey and use that as a chance to set up Stealth Rock, while he was probably expecting I was just going to go and take the KO. So instead extending that advantage. Some bad plays. On the second turn of the game, right after setting up spikes, I decided to switch Chansey into a physical Victini. Not quite sure what the logic was there. Even worse, he ended up predicting the switch and went into Cobalion, and that ended up making me lose Suicune, which was going to be at least somewhat of a decent switch into Victini. Then later, though I was able to successfully get Cresselia trapped with Gothitelle, and that was the way I was going to eliminate that. I kind of mistimed my rest and still had a spare turn of sleep, and that kind of gave his Greninja an extra turn to set up, and that was problematic. But it ended up to be okay, because earlier in the game, Gallade came in on a Bolt Strike instead of a V-Create from Victini, and it did not 2-hit KO thanks to max HP and close to max defense. And therefore I was able to get Gallade to survive when I think he was supposed to be death fodder at that point, and instead he was not. And Gallade, I think, got Parahacks maybe 1 time against the Klefki, and other than that, the big Gallade versus Greninja standoff, no Parahacks. The most crucial turn was probably when he subbed for the last time, hoping I was going to get Parahacks again, extend that advantage. Not the case, though, as I was just able to keep Drain Punching. I think that was his big opportunity to kill. And with that Drain Punch getting HP back, he was then not able to kill. So that was pretty much how that one went down. Protoman was MVP, and capped a 3-game winning streak during the middle of the season. Week 9. If Week 6 was the week where we kind of got things back on track, Week 9 would be the week where the wheels came back off. So this was a game against ShadyPenguinn, and I was honestly lucky that this was not an 0-6 loss. I came into it kind of feeling like I had a shot at a 6-0 win, and we had some silly things happen by Shady, and ended up saving me 3 differential, so we got out of it with an 0-3. Good plays, none, not this game. Bad plays, though, probably the first and most egregious one we did was I tried to counter against Armaniton with Chansey. Thought I had enough HP to live, turns out he was choice banded, so I did not. And Chansey was really huge against the rest of the team, and I just kind of threw it away for a decent amount of recoil, but honestly not enough. Later in the game, at the point I had decided that my main win condition is going to be Shell Smash Cloyster. One of the few weeks I actually did bring Shell Smash Cloyster physical anyway, and actually tried to go through with it. Gothitelle was supposed to come in, set up dual screens, and give Cloyster that window behind to get a sweep off, and it did not. Part of the problem was I kind of split the focus on Gothitelle, wanting to set up on either Vaporeon or Golbat, and I really should have just went with one or the other, kind of splitting that focus. I didn't have enough defenses. I needed the speed to outspeed Golbat and the defenses to live Scalds from the Vaporeon. I had a little bit of both, and ended up to be not so great. On top of that, he did not have U-turn on Golbat, so I could have kind of set up on Golbat, except for he also had Defog to remove screens, which is kind of funny. That's the original thing Defog did, and now it's more known for the hazard removal. Speaking of Golbat, I froze it with Ice Beam after a couple of hits, but you know that's a thing that happens to Golbat for him, it seems. As for unfortunate stuff that happened, well, let's see. I believe after Gothitelle died to Toxic, Cloyster comes in and gets Toxic himself, which I think he said was actually a misclick or didn't mean to do that, or something to that end. Anyway, it worked out because it blew away my Lumberry, which was there to guard against one Scald Burn, and, you know, blew away the Lumberry, and then on the second Scald, gets the burn, and, I mean, you know, it was also my fault for not bringing Rock Blast on Cloyster, which I think might have gotten the one at KO, or at least would have been one less hit that I would have had to endure. And instead I had Ice Shard for taking on Breloom with Mach Punch, which he did have Breloom that game too, so I'm not going to 100% fault it. But anyway, so yeah, Skull burned, and then the worst thing that then proceeded to happen was Cloyster then left Vappy with, I think, 4 HP. If Cloyster could have at least gotten that kill, which I wouldn't have really expected it to sweep at that point, as he did have Mega Manectric hanging around with Intimidate and all that stuff. But at least if Vaporeon had been gone, it would have opened the window for Gallade to come in for the second week in a row and close it out, and unfortunately that was not the case. And other than that, a little bit later, I had Whimsicott, which was built to actually take on his Mamoswine, and with Cotton Guard, and Cotton Guarded up and proceeded to get immediately critted. Now, granted, it was a crit Earthquake that he misclicked on, so that kind of made up for it, but at that point it was already over, and it was just kind of throwing salt in the wound, I guess. Week 10, and this was the do-or-die week for making the playoffs. If we win, we need help, but we can still potentially get in. If we lose, not mathematically, but we're most likely out. And this was against the Pittsburgh Steelix, and came on a bit of a weird circumstances, as the only day Swagilyph and I were able to schedule, I was out visiting family, and I wasn't even sure if I was going to have internet. Fortunately, though, I did have my trusty Magic Internet MiFi card, and that was able to provide me with internet needed to do the battle. Had some distractions around since you know, was not in a place I was accustomed to, you know, battling. Didn't have my recording set up or anything like that. Don't really think it affected the battle too much, though, not significantly. As for the result, ended up to be an 0-3 in his favor. Not really sure where I went wrong. I don't really feel like I played bad. I just played a little bit too safe and didn't make the plays I needed to make. The risky predictions, I guess. And, yeah, and then a couple of other things happened, but, you know, stuff happens. We did have one double switch that went in my favor somewhat early on, but wasn't able to parlay it into much of an advantage long term. And then both the bad plays that I guess are notable involve Cloyster, who brought a Choice Band this week because I needed that extra oomph to get through some stuff. Definitely didn't want to bring Shell Smash when he has a vacuum-waving Toxicroak that he could potentially bring. The first of which being Landorus Incarnate was in with a bunch of speed boosts, and if I didn't either Ice Shard as it stayed in or had it leave, it was going to sweep the team. If Cloyster did not kill it right there, I decided to go through with the Ice Shard, and of course he switched in to Slowking, and then later on had it in on Tangrowth, and again opted to go for the safe Ice move, and instead Slowking comes in and just eats it up instead of probably getting 2-hit KO'd by a Choice Banded Rock Blast. So, you know, just didn't pull the trigger right there. I guess that was the main thing that I could have done anyway. Also, a little bit after that, we had the only really lucky thing that went my way was Thunderbolt Paralysis, but he never got fully paralyzed, and it was on a Slowking, and it was kind of too late in the game for it to really matter anyway. And also, that Slowking probably should have been Toxic, which the Toxic miss by Suicune was pretty big, not only because it was a miss, but because it was an information giveaway, and now he knows not to leave it in, whereas he obviously was leaving it in to do something against Suicune. As soon as he sees Toxic, he knows to get out of there and don't let that thing stay in. So it was also a Calm Mind Slowking, so definitely doesn't want to take Toxic because it wants to maybe stay in for a while. Other than that, we also had a Rock Slide flinch by Scolipede on Zapdos on a turn I was going to Roar, and I think that was the time Scolipede was in and ended up to Baton Pass off to the Landorus that made me have to make the Cloyster play. And then towards the middle end of the game, we had Zapdos versus Tangrowth standoff for a while, and on back-to-back turns, we had Zapdos get poisoned and then criticaled when I was kind of whittling it down. You know, I had Air Cutter, but just those two turns kind of put me a little bit behind the 8-ball, and just wasn't able to pull it out when maybe without the extra 1/8 damage every turn. Maybe I could have, at least for a couple turns, getting that away. Anyway, as I was saying, this was kind of the swing game for whether or not I could potentially make it into the playoffs, and I knew I was going to need a late season collapse by one of the top 3 teams. At that point, I think Joe was 3rd in the Johto Conference, so I was eyeing his spot most likely, and as it kind of turned out, Joe did lose his last 3 games, so that would have kind of opened the door. I think if I had won this game 3-0 instead of lose it 0-3, that's a 12-point swing, and Joe and I both finished at 7-7, I believe at +5 differential, and I would get it on tiebreak. So yeah, that just kind of goes to show you how big this game actually could have potentially been had I been the winner of it. Although I will put a big caveat by that, that being the Week 14 game between the Steelix and the Sharpedos was actually ended up not being played, and I think Joe took the 3-0 forfeit loss on that. So really all he would have had to have done was show up to the game and lose 2-0 at the worst, or just outright win, and it all would have worked out as it did. But just figured I would include this bit just to show you guys that yes, this game actually was as big as I thought it was. Week 11, and we are now out of the playoffs, playing our first rematch against the San Jose Sharpedos. Decided for whatever reason, I guess some vain attempt at a mind game, to start the same 6 guys against Tom again. Varied the sets up though, and unfortunately the exact same result, an 0-3 loss. And up there's sirens going by, which is appropriate since Tom is a police officer. Anyway, I told Hitmontop this week that he was going to have to hit some Stone Edges or he's probably going to get cut from the team. And thankfully he did. Predicted out the switch out from the Blissey into stuff that would take a close combat better than it would a Stone Edge, which I believe was an Arcanine and a Starmie. Unfortunately, both of them were bulky enough with Intimidate on Arcanine to not even be 2-hit KO'd by it, so oh well. Then later in the game, also against that same Starmie, we Zapdos in on the Starmie, switched into a Psyshock. I decided, you know what, it's probably going to have Ice Beam. Let me just go ahead and take the kill, and it did in fact have Ice Beam, which Zapdos survived, and at least was able to save a point of differential there. Bad plays, I threw a Stun Spore out with Whimsicott, suicidal Stun Spore against Charizard Y, when I had already saw he had a Blissey. I hadn't confirmed that he had Aromatherapy, but I probably should have expected it, and just threw Whimsicott away, mostly for nothing. The main reason I did it, I'll get to in a second. Then also I threw Hitmontop in for a Mach Punch against Black Kyurem when that was my only thing left that had a chance to KO Blissey, so obviously kind of taking away any shot I had at winning the game by doing that. And on top of that, I got paralyzed on the Mach Punch anyway, so it was completely for nothing, and I think Magneton, the point of the Mach Punch was to soften Black Kyurem up for a Choice Scarf Flash Cannon, which I ended up to one-shot anyway. Or I think I actually might have taken some Life Orb damage, but, you know, whatever. Anyway, on top of that, I think Chansey at one point got burned off Flare Blitz, which, you know, it's the same chances of Flamethrower. It just feels weird because you don't think of Flare Blitz as, it's already got one added effect, which is Recoil. That kind of, that was against Arcanine and kind of made me switch out when maybe I could have stayed in and tanked the hits a little bit more if I wasn't losing 1/8 HP every turn. But then the main problem and the main point at which this match went out of control was when Starmie decided to get a critical hit with Psyshock that I was going to live a second one, be able to soft-boiled up, and then, you know, just kind of force it out, get up to hit points. Good stuff, and unfortunately got that crit, and then once Chansey went down, it was pretty much game at that point, as I had no safe switch in, to Charizard Y, which ordinarily Chansey pretty much shuts down. And once Chansey was gone, that was pretty much my shot at the game off that crit. Alright, so week 12. Oh my Arceus, this is the best game. This is the best game. The game of the year in the GBA, in my opinion, and probably in no one else's opinion, but whatever. So earlier in the season, I had joked, brought up as a legitimate concern in week 2 against Tubes, that, we might have a game timeout. What are we going to do about it? And everyone's like, no, and, they always find a way to somehow end in 60 minutes. Well, this week we played the Los Angeles Nidokings, champions of Season 1, coached by CrobatFTW, aka Tony Danza, and we engaged in 60 minutes of wonderful things happening, roosting and U-turning, volt switching, and wishing and soft boiling, and it was a grand old time. It was fantastic. We had Stealth Rock up on his side only for most of the game, so I was very pleased about that. I have no talking points for this game because it was sheer awesomeness from start to finish, and it was definitely my most favoritist game I have played, not only in the GBA, but 6th Gen in general, and I was so happy after this game ended. Nothing could quash the happiness that I felt after this game ended, so, yeah, it was amazing, and it was amazing. So anyway, so we ended up getting it ruled it was a 6-6, and there were no stats, which made the stats easy to report. Everything was 0-0. But since the GBA does not recognize ties, if there were ever to be a tie, this would definitely be one. We decided to, I believe the official call, failing anything else, was go with what the game said, and because I had, I guess, more total percentage HP remaining, I believe that's how it works. I was going to be given the win, but neither of us wanted, that to be the result, as that could potentially just change on a dime. So we decided to rock, paper, scissors for it, and I threw scissors, and Danza threw rock. So unfortunately, he was awarded the win, and we also did a 3v3, so we had something to post. But it was the rock, paper, scissors was what was the real determinant to the whole thing. But it was a fantastic game. It was definitely the strangest looking scorecard that week, and had people scratching their heads wondering, how in the world did you two do that? But that we did. 10 out of 10. Would play again. But yeah, we need to. Hopefully, we will get some official rules for what we're gonna do on timeouts in the future. Week 13. No way this could possibly live up to the Week 12 match, but we got a rematch with NumbNexus and the Escavaliers anyway. And I decided to go about this one kind of like Week 8 against Magnitude, and set up both Spikes and Stealth Rock, and just forced a lot of switches, and it was probably our best played game from top to bottom of the whole year, as we got out with a 5-0 victory, setting up Spikes in the very first turn against something that could hit Cloyster super effectively, but we're just gonna tank the hit, and I believe he just ended up to U-turn out. Later in the game, when it was close to being over, we just kind of made obvious plays, and for the most part it worked. Until the end of the game, we had Whimsicott against Bisharp. I was pretty sure Moonblast could kill, but if it did not, then I was going to be in danger of an Iron Head KO in return. And so I just decided to Cotton Guard up first. Even if he Swords Dance Cotton Guard, I would still make up a little bit of ground. And then Moonblast did proceed to KO on the next turn with a crit. I don't know if the crit mattered. It was about a 50% chance, at least, I think, for me to KO without the crit. So just gonna remove that. And I believe he also said it was a Scarfed Bisharp, which should have outsped Whimsicott, since it was like 1 point above Mienshao. So I don't know what was going on with that, if he had a minus speed nature or something. I don't know. Anyway, I still would have outpaced it with Cotton Guard, so I still would have gotten that off anyway. But it would have been in for a surprise. And then towards the end of the game, when it was pretty much in the bag, Rotom washes in on Chansey. Let's just T-Wave because Mienshao's probably coming in, and that's, of course, exactly what happened. The only bad play, and I'm not even really going to say it's a bad play by me, it's more of just a good play by him, but I don't have another bullet point to put this under. I Volt switched out with Zapdos against Miltank, and I went into Alakazam, and he T-Waved when I didn't necessarily have to switch, and probably could have just stayed in and killed him. With another air slash or two, or air cutter or two, if he didn't softball or milk drink up, and instead he just T-waves an Alakazam, which was perfect. So I just had to tip my hat to him on that one. We also got a little bit lucky in that he brought T-Bolt on Mega Gardevoir. I'm not really sure why. It's barely any better against Suicune, and because he had it, he actually went for it instead of Hyper Voice, and consequently, Chansey was able to come in and take a Thunderbolt from Mega Gardevoir instead of a Hyper Voice, which is considerably weaker, and Hyper Voice plus Psyshock would have put a lot more pressure on Chansey, might have made things a little more interesting. And then there was, however, a string of unfortunate stuff that happened. 4 out of 5 turns, the middle the one turn in there being when I actually switched, I did absolutely nothing. We missed 2 Focus Blasts in a row in a week where I was going to breed for Hidden Power Fighting and decided, nah, it's week 13 and we're not making the playoffs. I'm gonna be a little bit lazy, and of course I ended up missing 2 Focus Blasts in a row. And then I ended up saying, screw this, I'm going into Cloyster. Cloyster gets paralyzed. Okay, fine, I'm just in here to set up some spikes on this Miltank. I'm pretty sure I can tank it and, knock it out without too much difficulty. Cloyster's got leftovers and he's not taking anything with this Miltank. No, I get paralyzed twice in a row. Once on the T-Wave landing and then on the switch as well. So no additional spikes got to come up for Cloyster. But again, able to get out of that with a 5-0 and shave some differential back up, trying to get back up to even to finish the year. And finally, week 14, a rematch with the Chicago Granbulls, and at this point Kyle had traded away the rain aspect of the team, so don't have to worry about Kabutops, but do have to worry about Lucario. Fortunately for me, however, Lucario was not brought, so that's one less thing I had to worry about in this matchup. But I did expect him to correct his lack of knockoff, and in fact he did bring 2 things with knockoff, but I also made sure to make protecting Chansey's Eviolite top priority, and that's what I was able to do in this 4-0 victory. I also brought Gothitelle, mostly for Florges, to trap and get it dead, and no Florges, so I kinda at that point was just able to just, use Gothitelle for whatever. Ended up using it just to apply a quick Toxic onto Donphan towards the start of the game. Got me with a knockoff on the way in, so rather than try to set up some Reflex and try to live 2 hits, just went straight for a Toxic, and I think that was the correct play, just going in and cutting losses there. Then later we had Hitmontop versus Cofagrigus, which was pretty much exactly what I planned, and the set kind of worked to perfection. Just bulk up and then eat a status move, namely Will-O-Wisp, and then Thief his leftovers, and that's exactly what we did. And then shortly thereafter, the play that I think really capped the game, Mega Houndoom in, and I was debating against Chansey, and I was debating between, would I rather Soft Boiled or Thunder Wave? And in the end, I decided, let's just go into Hitmontop, which was fantastic because he ended up having Taunt, and if I had done nothing that turn and been stuck in there with a Chansey that can only Seismic Toss against near full 75% HP Mega Houndoom, we might have problems. But instead it was just a quick Mach Punch, and down goes the Houndoom. And then not really a bad play by me. I was just playing the percentages, trying to get the higher percentage of HP potentially out of the exchange, as Donphan was going to die to Toxic. I decided to Roost, and he correctly Earthquaked. So I think that also happened in another game that week, the Red Sox versus the Mankeys. We had 2 Roosts into Earthquakes happen that week. And fortunately, though, Zapdos is way bulkier than Golbat, so it was less consequential for me. Wasn't really too much in the way of hacks for or against. I guess the only lucky things were decisions he made, not bringing Lucario, and then I think towards the end of the game he could have saved a differential or 2, but as it was, we were able to get out of the season with a 4-0. I potentially could have made it a 5-0 if I had taken some risks, but we didn't get back to even, but we did get to -1, so room for improvement for next year, and finished the season at 6-8. And so I had thought coming into this week, pretty sure that I was going to end up being 5th place in the conference, in the weaker conference, so I was kind of sad about that. I was going to end up only being ahead of Nexus and Kyle, both of whom finished with 12 losses. However, Nexus did me a solid in the last week and actually took a win off the Nidokings, and because of that loss, he stayed at 6-8. And we improved to 6-8, and then with the +9 differential that we got over the last 2 weeks, we're actually able to take that 4th place spot back, and I was pretty pleased about that, finishing in the middle of the conference. Good for 10th overall. Certainly would have liked to have done a good bit better, but I'll take it for the first season. 1 game difference from being 500, and the only Kanto Conference team that we finished ahead of was actually the Atlanta Haluchas, Fizzy Stardust, and the rest of the teams that we were ahead of were all fellow Johto Conference members. So that just kind of shows you how strong the Kanto Conference really was. We had 5 interconference games, and we only won 1 of them and lost 4. But that means we did have, however, a positive record in the Johto Conference, finishing, I think, 5-4. But then, granted, 4 of those wins were against Cleveland and Chicago. So read into that what you will. Alright, so that does it for the game recap section of the video. Now we're going to move into the stats and team awards segment, and I'll start off by enumerating what stats I kept. First off, we have appearances, which is pretty straightforward. How many times did the Pokemon get brought? This does include cases like Week 8 with Zapdos, where Pokemon was there at Team Preview, never actually saw the field, but maybe it affected some decisions made during the battle, so it still counts. Of course, we have the GBA standard KOs, deaths differential, that we've, keep track of normally. That's just for corroborating, making sure we didn't make any mistakes, cleaning up any discrepancies, because there have been some of those this year. Then the first unique stat we have is big hits. I define big hits as anytime you use 1 attack and deal over 50% to whatever it is they have out. So this isn't necessarily a KO. You can get a big hit without a KO. You can get a KO without a big hit if you're like Chansey seismic tossing stuff. So this is just another way to kind of show a Pokemon's offensive potential without just being KOs. And then we also have 4 switches, which can be either an offensive stat or a defensive stat, depending. This was simply how many times the opponent was in a bad spot. Some of these are subjective, this one especially. How many times they were in a bad spot and kind of needed to switch, whether it was going to be because they need to make a defensive switch because whatever was out was going to die. So this would be, Cloyster is probably going to be forcing defensive switches, or something like Chansey, and against a special attacker, they kind of have to switch because they can't deal any damage, and they're going to be, set up on or statused or killed eventually anyway. So that's more of an offensive switch. But either way, 4 switches are something we recorded. And then the big one that is the main reason this video took so long to make, total percentage HP taken. Yes, I did that. I went through every video and counted every bout of damage, added all the damages up, and then divided by their max HP for that battle. So for every battle, I have the total percentage of their max HP they took for that battle. So this can get pretty simple if they had no leftovers and just died. It's just an easy 100%. But for Zapdos and Chansey several weeks, it climbed up pretty high. Along with recording this, we also have total hits taken, which is just as it says, total hits they took. It does include fatal hits, so theoretically if you want to do total hits minus deaths, you would kind of get hits endured, except for that would get skewed by deaths due to burn, recoil, all that other stuff. Then we have blocks. I'm pretty sure when the GBA has official defensive stats, we will have blocks defined in some official way. But the way I decided to do it for this was switching in, taking an attack for a teammate. The attack that was aimed at them needed to be something that was going to be not necessarily fatal, but problematic. For example, knockoff against Chansey, probably not fatal, but rather problematic. Generally, anything super effective is going to qualify. So like an over prediction or something like that wouldn't qualify. And the other caveat is that you need to take either under 33% or under 25% if it was a resisted hit. So something like Mega Pinsir's Return and against Zapdos, probably going to deal over 25%, so does not count as a block. And the only other one left is Stall Outs, which was in the GBA we attribute the KO to the Pokemon that inflicted the status rather than the one that did the roost stalling or whatever to actually get the toxic KO. So this was just something I threw on there to throw some credit to where I felt like some credit was due. There's also 3 other average or otherwise percentage-based statistics, but we will look at those when we actually pull up the stat sheets. So coming up next is the team awards based on these stats before I actually show you guys the stats and kind of ruin the surprise. Alright, here we go with the team awards for the Season 2 Utah Jasmine. We got 4 awards to begin with that are mostly subjective based, and then the rest are all strictly based on stats. To start out with, we have Offensive MVP. This one should come as no surprise. It's the only one of our team members that made it into the top 10 of the league-wide MVP race, which is, simply based on differential. And that is, of course, Cloyster weighing in with 12 KOs, which is twice as many as the next most KOs on the team, which I believe was Zapdos. Mostly getting those with the Scarf set that debuted in Week 6 against the Pelippers, having some success other than that without the Scarf set, but for the most part, the Choice Scarf set was the go-to set for this offensive threat. And I think it was, especially after that Week 6 performance, it kind of became the thing teams had to prepare for most defensively when going up against the team. Defensive MVP, this one, however, is definitely a coin toss, and I have it attributed to Chansey. Chansey wouldn't have been able to do that great work without, of course, its cohort Zapdos there, ready to come in, take fighting attacks, and roost them off. I just felt like Chansey is more of a pure defensive Pokemon than Zapdos. Zapdos could be used offensively, and was used offensively a few times during the year. So just for being more of a pure defensive player, I'm going to give the defensive MVP to Chansey. It's EV-lighted Chansey. I probably don't need to sing its praises of how well it takes hits, provided, of course, you can keep the EV-light on there. And I believe for the most part, I did keep EV-light on Chansey for pretty much the entire year, excluding, I think it died to a knockoff one time, but of course that doesn't really count. And I think there may have been a tactical sacrifice of it at one point when I wanted Chansey to die against Nexus. There might have been like one other time, but for the most part, Chansey's EV-light stayed safely stuck to it. Now we have Best Win. I'm going to give this one to Week 8 against the Sawsbucks. This was our only out-of-conference win. We honestly didn't have too many wins to pick from. We had the 4 wins against Nexus and Kyle. And even though I felt like I played pretty well in the last 2 weeks, it's still against a team with an abysmal record, so I'm not really going to say that. The game against John, there were circumstances around that game with having played on Showdown. He was sunburned and all that other bad stuff, so I don't really want to praise myself too much for that one, but I felt like the game against Steve, we really played well. We got enough of the lucky breaks to go my way. I just felt like all around that was the best win that we had of the year. To turn that around, the worst loss was the very next week, Week 9, against Shady and the New York Mankeys. Just made some plans and just bad. It was just bad all around. It was one of the few matches that I actually felt pretty confident in going in, and like I think I mentioned earlier, I felt like, hey, I could get a 6-0 out of this if I play it right. Instead, I almost got 6-0'd. So yeah, Week 9 was pretty terrible, and sort of, as I mentioned before, kind of started the downward spiral when brought the win streak to a close, and was just generally a down moment in the season. Alright, next up we have the objective stats. I don't really have much justification of these because they are, of course, purely based on the statistics. First off, we have Golden Armor. This is given to the Pokemon that took the least amount of damage per hit, and averaging 24.3% damage taken. That's on average being 5 hit KO'd. We have, surprisingly enough, Gothitelle, not Chansey or Zapdos, but Gothitelle, winning this award, and part of that, of course, is due to the way Gothitelle was used, not as a wall, but rather just something that traps other walls that can't really hurt it very much, and consequently takes very little damage per hit from those walls. Next up, we have the Silver Slugger. This is given to the Pokemon on the team that had the most total big hits, and probably not that surprising, that goes to our offensive MVP Cloyster, weighing in with 9 big hits. We have the Heart of Restoration. This goes to the Pokemon that had the most percentage HP taken over the course of the year, and with a whopping 2,080% HP taken, that goes to #1 draft pick Zapdos. So much roosting, so much leftovers going into all of that. We have the Soul of Endurance, the most total hits taken, and that goes to Chansey with, appropriately enough for a Nintendo game, 64 hits taken over the course of the year. We also have the Olivine Badge of Honor. This is given to the Pokemon who helped out their team the most by taking the most blocks, and that is also going to be Chansey, weighing in with 15 blocks. Next up, we have some win percentage base statistics to close it out. We have Harbinger of Victory. This is the highest win percentage of this Pokemon was brought, with a minimum of 3 games being brought in order to qualify, just to disqualify Slurpuff, which would otherwise be 100%. And that goes to Mega Alakazam, winning 2/3 of the games. Did we? F Mega Alakazam was brought on the team. Sort of the opposite of that, we have the Cheer Captain Award, given to the Pokemon with the lowest lose percentage while this Pokemon was benched. And that goes to Hitmontop. We only lost 1/3 of our games while Hitmontop was on the sidelines, just there to cheer us on. Alright, here's the meat of the video for you stat junkies out there. And rather than actually show this in some, nice looking layout or whatever, just gonna throw it at you in basic. Here's the Excel file, and this is just it. No fancy colors, no anything. Just here it is. Here's the raw data that I'm sure some of you anyway want to see. So first off, we have Zapdos coming in with, I believe, the team high of 12 appearances. Only did not bring it against the Pelippers and the Mankeys in weeks 6 and 9. Here, of course, we see the KOs, deaths differential that we can always keep track of. We see big hits equaling KOs. Doesn't necessarily mean anything. There's the team high 2080 total percentage HP taken. And then here are the 3 percentage or average whatever based stats I alluded to earlier. We have the average damage taken per hit, the win percentage when the Pokemon was brought, and the lose percentage if they were benched. These last 2 had very complicated formulas that I'll keep up there just to show them, I guess. This one, I believe, I actually had to manually input the rows that they were not playing in. Yeah, that's Falls of the Zapdos. Gonna move on now. There's probably not gonna be too much to say about these. I guess one thing about Zapdos, we could note this. These were the 2 big games where Zapdos took a ton of damage. This was against week 12. Was against Danza. Week 10 was against Swagilyph, so you can see, and then also earlier we had against Gubs. Pretty sizable amount of HP taken in those games. And then of course you see week 8 where it didn't actually hit the field. It didn't take any damage. But anyway, moving on, we have Gregor the Suicune to go with Falls or the Zapdos, and mostly a pedestrian year for Suicune. No real standout games. Took a lot of damage in week 9 against Shady. I believe that was because of the brought rests that week, and actually pulled off a couple of rests. That was where, I guess, a good chunk of this total percentage HP came from. But once again, an early draft pick coming in with a negative differential, taking one for the team. Just there to be a defensive cog, of course. Forcing a couple switches. I believe Zapdos had a decent number of force switches. We'll have to see. I didn't hand out an award for most force switches because it is kind of a really subjective award. So we'll have to see if that's the next. Probably actually going to be actually Medi the Chansey, also with 8 force switches. Maybe it's not the most overall. You can see here the difference was what about 200 some odd percentage HP percentage different. Of course, a raw HP stat. Of course, Chansey will have taken a lot more. Just being the way it is. Almost surprising that it's only a -3 differential, but did rack up 4 KOs with Seismic Toss, despite being, of course, that being its only offensive move. You can see we lost 2/3 of the games. We did not bring Chansey in. That might be the team high. You could probably reverse those 2 stats and get some meaning out of them, but I just kind of went with what we could get. Alright, we'll move on to, this page is going to be kind of brief. We have Iris.X, the Slurpuff we acquired starting in week 7. That was actually the only game that I brought Slurpuff in. Hoping for Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire to give us some new tools to work with and make that trade work out a little bit better. But other than that, I kind of felt like we do have some stats here for Steelix that I kept up until the point that we traded it. So, I felt like Steelix was kind of going to be dead weight. I looked ahead and saw, I'm not going to bring Steelix for the rest of the year, so, let's get something that potentially I could bring. One note here is that I don't have any deaths recorded for Slurpuff because the one death that it did suffer over the course of the season was when it was in Atlanta being used by Fizzy. I think it came in it literally switched in and immediately died. It didn't even get to select an attack, so... these stats are just for the Utah Jasmine, so I'm only counting when it was under my control. Likewise, I did not bother to keep up with the rest of Steelix's stats once I traded over to Shady. Next up, we have Windman, the Whimsicott, which I would say is, you know, considering my expectations of it, and that I hadn't used Whimsicott at all prior to the GBA because it was a 5th gen poke, I think it did pretty well for the season. Yeah, I was just very satisfied with it. I was sort of apprehensive taking it as my first 2-year, but I felt like it had a lot of potential, and it had several games where I felt like it did pretty well. Week 9, I think, was one. As bad as that week was, it got 2 KOs on things that resisted both of its stabs, which is the only attacks I brought. And, yeah, it was able to knock both those out. Week 12, it had a nice crit Psychic that did a lot more than I expected. Yeah, Whimsicott just really surprised me this year. Still with a negative differential, unfortunately, as actually I guess most of our stuff has. But it, you know, yeah, got 4 KOs almost seems too low for what it got. But I guess also 4 big hits. Yeah, things like week 1 against Alex's Garchomp, where it almost got the KO, and also it almost got the KO against Tom's Mandibuzz in one of those 2 battles. Just unfortunately just lacked the power to get the KO, but almost getting 6 KOs was Whimsicott. And then next up we got a favorite of mine, Proto-Man the Gallade. I don't think I need to say what was his best week. It was obviously week 8. That amazing performance against the Sawsbucks, against Greninja with drain punches and just narrowly living stuff. I believe he had, well, Power Up Punch, Rock Tomb, and U-Turn, I believe. And I didn't want to U-turn out and lose the stat bonuses, so was forced to go for those not very effective attacks. Just the perfect typing to take the Fighting and Rock combo. No, not Fighting and Rock. Yeah, Fighting and Rock combo, which is, you know, something that is somewhat hard to resist. But Proto-Man does do that. Still with a negative differential, unfortunately. 62.5 lose percentage when we did not bring him. Didn't actually bring him too much. Only less than half the year. We're going to have to see if we can get him more involved in the offense. This year, I felt like we kind of had to use him more offensively. I know in the draft video I mentioned I kind of wanted to bring more status options on him if I could. We never got to use Assault Vest on him, which of course would conflict with status options. That'll be something that maybe we look into doing for the for next season. But definitely one of my favorite pokes, and looking forward that we have it another year. Next up we have Top Man, the Hitmontop. Actually brought him more than some of the other stuff, but yeah, here we see the lose percentage if he was benched was 33%. I guess that's not too bad. I think almost even more telling though, win percent, we only won 1/4 of the games that he was brought. Let's see how that compares. We got 41% Zapdos, 40%. That kind of doesn't count. 40%, 50%. Top Man only 25%. So if you want to give out an LVP, I'm pretty sure it's gonna be Hitmontop. That's not to say he was totally useless though. Was our main source of Rapid Spin, which was what I drafted him for. So in that respect, he did all right. But goodness, man, that's just abysmal. 25% win percentage when he was brought, and the lowest lose percentage when he was sitting on the sidelines. Just not very good. Not good. Hitmontop is definitely one of the things that might be on the trading block come next draft, but of course there's some new games to come out in November before we make any final decisions on that. But yeah, Hitmontop did not have a very good year. Might have just been a down year for him. That's not to say he was completely useless. He certainly did his job. It's just he didn't do a very standout performance. Next up we have Comet Woman, and really Gothitelle just pretty much did most of the stuff I asked her to do. The only week she didn't was week 9. That was kind of my fault because I split the EVs in a bad sort of way. She either did her job or her job was done by existing on the team and goading people into not bringing the things that I was afraid of. For example, week 14, Kyle did not bring Florges, so Gothitelle didn't have to do its job. That's not necessarily a bad thing. That just means that this was something I was afraid of having to deal with, and I didn't have to deal with it. So Gothitelle actually had even differential, which was kind of funny. Is that our first positive differential Pokemon? It might be. Well, besides this, which almost doesn't count. Yeah, even differential for Gothitelle. Moving on now. From Comet Woman to Cold Man, the Cloister. Brought him in 10 games, and you can see there 12 KOs, 5 deaths for the +7 differential. That's definitely our biggest differential, with the 9 big hits. And 6 force switches, which is not as many. I think that's going to give a tie between Chansey and Zapdos for the most forced switches. But yeah, we see there's the game against John, and then this was the late game to close it out against Steve. And yeah, we kind of just had KOs in bursts. Actually, we had the 4-0 performance against the Pelippers, 2-0 against the Sawsbucks, and then to close out the year and get into that top 10 in the MVP race, the 3-0 against the Granbulls. So yeah, this was Cloister. This is our MVP. These are his stats. And move on to what was kind of our joke pick of the draft, which was Magneton. Only brought him 3 games. I was only going to bring him 2 games, and then I decided I would kind of maybe surprise Danza by, I think I put on the team Twitter, yep, Magneton's going to retire after week 11 from active duty, and then I brought him in week 12, trying for some vain hope and a surprise. But as it is, he actually finished the year with a positive differential, so I'm kind of proud about that. He went out 3-2, only being brought 3 times. Of course, week 12, nobody died technically in week 12, so that was the main reason for that. Unfortunately, he was never brought in any games that we won, so oh well. And then on to our mega pick of Magic Man. Magic Man, we got not the best mega pick in the world. Hello, Train. Not the best mega pick in the world, but for what it was worth, he did pretty well. And I think these might be the highest 2. Yeah, having a high stat in both of these is good, I believe, as we see Hitmontop had a low number in both of these stats. Of course, I already said the 100% there. That doesn't count. That's why I put the minimum of 3 games being brought. Oh yeah, Hitmontop's was abysmal. Everyone else's was hovering around 50% except for Magneton, but Magneton was, again, kind of a joke pick. But yeah, Mega Alakazam, definitely worthy of that Harbinger of Victory award. Winning 2/3 of the games when he was brought, and the games, yeah, losing 3/4 of our games were lost when Mega Alakazam was sitting on the bench. So, yeah, definitely wanted to dish out some big hits. Also, I believe our only, let's see, well, okay, once again, Starpuff again, but 5-3. It's no 12-5, but it was I think good for second on the team among team members who actually played more than 1 game. So these are these stats for Mega Alakazam, and there they are. Hopefully these came in clear enough. If you max the resolution in full screen, hopefully you can read all these. It's just black and white, so hopefully it's pretty legible. And if you have any questions, any discrepancies, I'm sure there might be some discrepancies with the KOs. Deaths differential, though going back and watching all the videos, I'm pretty confident that these are correct. I know a couple of the stats on the WordPress, especially for Suicune, I believe is only attributed with like about 3 deaths, or 3 KOs, I believe, something like that. So, there's a chance some of these may conflict with some of the official stats. It's part of what this video is for, to help hash some of those out. So if you notice any inconsistencies, please do leave me a comment, and we'll see if we can get that corrected. That's it for the stats, though. Alright, and before we close out the statistics and awards portion of the video, we have some, I'm going to call them team power rankings. This would kind of, I guess, be akin to a depth chart in other sports. These are going to be purely subjective, so of course your opinions as a viewer may differ. But we're just going to go through all 11 members, final members of the squad. It's kind of 4 tiers rather, based, 3 Pokemon in each tier, with only 2 in the bottom tier, of course, since there's only 11 guys. But yeah, let's just kind of get into it. This is kind of going to be the replacement for overall MVP. So number 1, we have the number 1 draft pick, Zapdos. We can use it offensively, we can use it defensively. It was the most brought Pokemon for a reason. Primarily, of course, we did use it defensively. But yeah, it's just one of my favorite things to bring, and we brought a lot, and I felt like it was the biggest contributor overall. Number 2 is, it's no surprise here, we have the 2 primary defensive cogs at 1 and 2. We have Zapdos followed by Chansey. I had never used Eviolite Chansey prior to the GBA. I assumed it was going to be pretty good, and it pretty much lived up to expectations well enough that I'm going to value, of course, that defensive first, and those are going to be the number 1s and 2s. Number 3, though, is going to be the offensive unit of choice, which was Cloyster this year, as we've already harped on well enough, good enough for the number 3 in the power rankings. And then I gave Whimsicott a little bit of praise, and he is going to be number 4. Coming in, again, wasn't really sure what to expect, but overall I liked what I saw. Number 5 is Gallade. Not really used that often, but a couple of games where he really was quite useful, and always the thing I enjoy using, and looking forward to using him some next year as well. Number 6, I kind of harped on this with looking at the stats. Statistically the most valuable Pokemon potentially was Mega Alakazam, or Mega, who we of course are not going to have next year, at least most likely not. But it was weird. I don't really like Mega Alakazam nearly as much as regular Alakazam, just because the inability to run Sash. You don't really have to worry about that. Life Orb, Life Orb doesn't hurt regular Alakazam anyway. Lose some of the speed, but I'm not that terribly fussed about that. But anyway, Mega Alakazam, good enough for 6th in our power rankings to round out the top half. Number 7, the round 2 pick, kind of on a bum year. Suicune wasn't really used as effectively as I would have liked for him to be, so we got him for a couple more years. We'll see if he can have a bounce back year in Season 3. Number 8 is Gothitelle. Kind of used wherever we needed her to be used, and for the most part did the job that I asked her to perform. Well done, Comet Woman. This is going to be our only year with you. Don't really have plans to pick her up again next year. Hopefully somebody does, though. Gothitelle's pretty cool. And number 9 is going to be kind of the dog of the year, I guess, the LVP, Hitmontop. He's not going to be dead last in the power rankings, though, because, again, that valuable Rapid Spin utility, valuable Mach Punch, maybe not necessarily the best Pokemon in any battle, but I felt like he was still important enough to not rank last. And then 10th is going to be Magneton. Wasn't really instrumental to any wins because he didn't get brought in any wins, mostly because we only brought him against Tom and Tanza. But he was there. He was sort of the only team mascot there after we traded off Steelix, so we are going to be looking to maybe pick up a Steel type to replace him as the mascot. And then last is Slurpuff, just because we only brought it one time. I hope Slurpuff will have some value to the team going forward. I'm just kind of waiting on Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire. Slurpuff we do have because it was exchanged for Steelix's contract length. We do have it for Seasons 3 and 4, barring any trades. And again, hopefully we're going to get Fire Punch or something from the move tutors to expand Slurpuff's repertoire. But even if it doesn't, there's still some other stuff I want to do with it. Just did not find many games where I wanted to bring it this season. That's going to wrap it up for the statistical portion of the stuff, so let's go with the closing comments now. Alright, that's going to just about wrap it up for the Utah Jasmine in the Global Battle Association Season 2. I just want to give a big thanks to Steve Magnitude for adding us in as an expansion team this year. We had so much fun. This was a great experience to partake of, and great community. Really proud to be a part of it going forward. I just can't thank you enough. This has definitely been the thing that's made me happiest about 6th Gen so far, as evidenced by the lack of other 6th Gen uploads on the channel, which I'll hopefully be correcting in the off-season. But speaking of the off-season, we have a lot of stuff going on. We've had a lot of fun in the GBA ourselves, and we've also encouraged or inspired other people to go out and make their own GBA fan leagues, whatever you want to call them. And now we have an official one of our own, the GBA D-League, which sign-ups began, and the process has been going on over the past week or so. And we may cut to a top 32, and those people are in a mixed-tier tournament. We just about have the top 8, or the 8 group winners from that decided. Those 8 are going to be the coaches for the 8 teams in the GBA D-League. And yeah, there's going to be a full-fledged draft and everything, and it's going to be the same kind of dynasty stuff that is in the main GBA. Those coaches are going to be retained from here on out, I guess, unless one of them wants to retire. And you can follow the D-League and all that stuff over at the newly made GBA official YouTube channel. This was something that some people had been wondering if there was going to be made for a while, and finally now it is made. This is where all the future extra GBA content is going to be. That's stuff like podcasts, power rankings, weekly recaps, any of the playoff games. That stuff is now going to live on the GBA official channel instead of Magnitude's channel, so this is definitely something, if you're a fan of the GBA, you're going to want to go check out, subscribe to, all that, whatever stuff you want to do. There's going to be playlists every week, with playlists, links to all the videos for that week, as well as playlists for every team, so pretty much everything you would want to get your GBA fix is going to be located over there on, I think it's youtube.com/GBA official. But there will be a link to it in the description, so definitely go and check that out. Other than that, it's going to be a pretty long off season compared to the time between season 1 and 2. The next draft is going to take place in December, and of course that means we're going to have Omega Ruby, Alpha Sapphire coming out with new Megas, probably new move tutors, maybe some new hidden abilities will get revealed or become available, and those are all things that could shake up the draft. It should be interesting times with the season 3 beginning properly sometime in January, I think. We're going to be adding in 2 new coaches to bring up the total to 16. I know who they are, but I'm not at liberty to divulge, so again, stay tuned to the GBA official YouTube channel and Twitter for more breaking updates on that. Yeah, definitely looking forward to season 3. We also got some policies to review. Of course, the season or the week 12 game against Danza, which based on the way that was ruled originally, we would have actually ended up with an even record on this season. Instead, of course, we ended up 6-8. Things like that, I think, were good that they inspired us to really go, and we need to debate some and talk about these things and make an official GBA rulebook, which Tom, coach of the Sharpedos, has already gotten a good start on for us, so I'm definitely looking forward to looking over that and talking about some of this stuff in the off season. Definitely something very important. I think I've said in an earlier video, season 1 I felt like was kind of the prototype this season. Season 2 has been the test type, and season 3 forward will hopefully be the production model, to put it in Evangelion terms, I guess. So yeah, looking forward majorly to season 3. But again, in the off season, make sure to go and check out the D League and see what coaches, see what that draft is going to be about, and that should be pretty fun to follow as well. I believe most of the people who made it are going to be, for the most part, active YouTubers, so you should see stuff coming up from them with their games as well. Alright, just a couple more words about Season 2 before we officially sign off on it. I guess this is a spoiler if you haven't watched the Season 2 Championship video yet. But a huge congratulations to my longtime buddy, Blah, for taking it home with the Boston Red Sox and his first season in the league's an expansion team, defeating the sort of expansion team, New Orleans Pelippers, coached by Pokemon, aka John. And, big congratulations to him as well for, for being the conference champion of the Johto Conference. That, is nothing to scoff at in itself. But, there's probably no one except, I guess, myself, who I would have wanted to win the league more than Blah. So I'm really pleased he was able to do it, coming in at the 3 seed in the Kanto Conference, having to essentially have a play-in game in week 14 against Shady, and winning that game, and then beating what I thought was kind of the favorite to take the league, which was Kote's premier reign team, as we like to say, and then squeaking it out against Tubes, and then defeating John as well. Certainly go and watch that game if you haven't already and you just got spoiled. It's definitely a very hard-hitting game. Not exactly my style of game, I guess, but it's still made for an exciting watch, I think. Anyway, so yeah, as for, I guess, how we did, we were 7-8, not really where I wanted to be. I wanted to be 8-6 or better, and we just did not get there. you know, after 8-6 looked unlikely, you know, I was hoping maybe we can at least finish even at 7-7, which is where a lot of teams actually finished. Unfortunately, could not quite get there either. But I guess I'll take 6 and 8. You know, we didn't have the strongest draft out there. Kind of drafted for the most part, you know, what I wanted. I think the only draft pick I would 100% go back and change would be Steelix. I'm gonna blame that. You know, it's a bad decision on my part, partly due to that was the only pick where I got sniped. Other than that, I pretty much got to pick what I wanted every round. And unfortunately, Fizzy grabbed the Magnezone from me right before then, and I decided to replace it with a subpar replacement that I thought was going to do the same role, and unfortunately did not. So Steelix probably the only thing. There was also sort of a homer pick too, mascot pick or something like that, if you will. And it just did not end up working out, but hopefully Slurpoff will alleviate that mistake going forward. Other than that, though, I was more or less pretty satisfied. Well, with the way the draft went, you know, I was pretty well aware we weren't going to have, you know, a great offense this season. We were going to have to kind of manufacture that, and you know, we got 6 wins out of the season. Granted, again, of course, 4 against the 2 worst teams in the league. You know, it was yeah. I mean, our schedule shaped up pretty favorably, to be honest, considering the teams that we played twice in the conference, which were, you know, I guess ultimately besides myself, the lowest ranked when all was said and done, with Tom losing out in the first round of the playoffs. The other 3 lower ranked teams, the two top, that is to say the top 2 teams in the conference, we played them once, whereas everyone else in the conference we played twice. So, you know, we kind of had the easiest schedule, and still we're not able to make the playoffs. But oh well, you know, we'll see about getting those deficiencies corrected in the next draft coming up in Season 3, and that should be a good time. I'm definitely looking forward to seeing how the team will evolve with the new 3 members that we're going to be getting as 4 members with the Mega. Alright, that wraps it up for talk about the Utah Jasmine. Thank you guys again for supporting the team during this season, and hope you'll be back to support us again in Season 3. Now I'm going to turn some attention to other stuff on the channel really quick, kind of throw a channel update in at the end of this video for a couple minutes. So first off, there's been 2 main pieces of content that I've wanted to get posted that just have not, namely those being the TPX 4th Gen Finale Mixed Tier Tournament and Battle Kid 2 Mountain of Torment LP. And those, I think I'm just going to go ahead and put on indefinite delay for different reasons. For the finale tournament, it's kind of a problem that myself, Makar, and Xerxes all have. We're sitting on 4th Gen videos to post, and we kind of don't want to post them because once we post them, it feels like it's officially all over. If we don't do a good job on them, then we don't get extra chances to go back and play more games and get more videos. So it's kind of some anxiety on that, as well as the last couple videos in that series. I'm going to try to do one of my sometimes elaborate intros that I like to do that take me many hours to complete, and I want to make sure we have ample time to do that to the full justice that I want it to be. As for Battle Kid, it's a little bit more cut and dry there. It's not really a matter of me being lazy or not having time. It's just I really want that LP to be of great quality. And if you watch the first LP, which I still think is one of the best LPs I've done, it was kind of low tech. It was a camcorder pointed in front of the TV. And I still know pretty much nothing about the game. It is still, I'm looking at it right now, it is still in the box it came in. And I've not once put it in the NES, waiting to make sure this is a fully blind LP, but the thing is, I just don't have the appropriate stuff to capture it at the quality I really want it to be captured at, because this game is kind of really important to me for various reasons. And I want to make sure I do a really good job at this LP, just for you know, my own sake, I guess. I do have a Dazzle capture card, but Dazzle is pretty awful and does not record audio properly, and I'm just generally dissatisfied with it. Would not recommend it. So what I think I'm going to do at some point in the future is pick up what is it called, Elgato, which I think is the generally considered the best capture card. And you know, that could also lead into some other content, perhaps some Wii U Smash. I'm certainly far from the best at Smash, but you know, I could potentially post some videos with that. Anyway, I'll be looking into some of that in the future, but until then, it's just gonna basically those two pieces just to, you know, get them off pressure for me posting them. Just those are on indefinite suspension, and for the reasons I just stated. As for content that will be coming up in this off season, honestly, I'm not really sure. I've got a couple of 6th gen games that I would like to post. If you guys want to, you know, issue challenges, I would be happy to accept them. I don't quite follow the Smogon, all the stuff that's been going on there. Some of the bans I don't agree with. You know, for the most part, it didn't really matter to me in 4th gen because the bans were on stuff that I wasn't really planning on using anyway, but this is some stuff that I actually do want to use and will be using because I don't really care about Smogon. For the most part, it's mostly the same stuff, though. I just kind of I don't really play tiers, I just kind of bring, you know, whatever. Something like myself and Mankeys kind of have the same deal, you know. He might bring a Charmeleon, you know, into a fight. I might bring a Wormadam Trash Cloak, you know. So just kind of just bringing whatever looks good to bring at the moment, whatever I feel like that needs to be used. I haven't brought that in a while. So, you know, just, you know, not necessarily any strict mixed tier type thing, just you know, bring cool stuff, I guess, is the general rule. You know, and you can, if you want to challenge me, you can just leave a comment on literally any video. You can leave a comment on. You know, one of the benefits to having a fairly small channel is I can read pretty much every comment. And if I have anything intelligent to reply, I usually reply to all comments. So if you leave me a comment, then the little bell indicator at the top of YouTube will let me know. Unfortunately, they've kind of phased out YouTube PMs, but sometimes they do check those, and we do. I hate that website, but we do have the Twitters if you want to issue challenges that way to get me some more videos to post. That would be great. Other than that, we do have a Alpha Sapphire thing planned. I know I said probably at some point I don't really want to do any more Pokemon LPs, but I'm going to make an exception for Alpha Sapphire because it is a remake of Sapphire, and I kind of have some, I guess if you want to call it, hipster appreciation for Sapphire. You know, 3rd gen was the generation that came out kind of as Pokemon was losing its steam, and myself and my best friend were really the only ones who were still into it during the 3rd gen era, so I have some fond sentimental value of Sapphire for that reason. And we're going to be doing a no centers, no marts attempt on the first playthrough of Alpha Sapphire. It's not necessarily going to be a blind run, and then of course it's a remake. And I'll probably be watching Andrew Bubblema's run of the original Sapphire before I go in on this. But I don't know if it's going to continue. Should the no centers, no marts fail? You know, we'll talk about that. I'd like to try to get you guys involved in that. But it should be interesting. You know, we did a no centers run on Pokemon X for the first playthrough, and that was extremely easy because the experience share makes Pokemon X and Y a joke. But we'll see how Alpha Sapphire handles that. So, yeah, that's pretty much going to be it for the immediate future of the channel in the coming months. You know, unfortunately, those 2 pieces of content that I want to post, I'm just going to put those on delay so I can make sure that they are quality that I will be able to look back on and be proud of, as opposed to rush and not be very satisfied with them looking back. At this point, I think I've more than passed the point at which they're going to be considered timely pieces of content, so at this point I'm just going to be concentrating on making them be good. And again, we're going to have Alpha Sapphire no centers, no marts attempt coming up when Oras comes out, and hopefully some intermittent 6th gen postings as well. I do have 3DS Smash, but that's kind of a game that's capture board mandatory in my opinion. It's kind of too difficult to do webcam for that. As far as a capture card, nope, immediate plans to get one. When the new 3DS comes out, I'll probably get one of those at some point. And I might throw a capture board on that, or potentially on a 2DS, since that's not really that portable anyway. It makes sense to be the, and I don't have one. Makes sense to put a capture board on that. But we'll see. So that's been it for the, yeah, it's going to conclude this video. Thank you guys if you watched all the way to this point for watching. Hopefully the table of contents in the description was helpful. And thanks so much for all your support. You know, again, we don't really try to grow the channel, so I never tell you guys to, you know, like, subscribe, and all that stuff. Do what you want. I don't really care. I just enjoy posting videos every once in a while for you guys. Yeah, that is it. So, see you guys in Season 3. And, again, go check out the GBA official YouTube channel for the D-League that's going to be going on in the off-season. And I guess keep checking back here for updates on further postings that we'll have up until then. See you guys then. Later days.